Before becoming skyscrapers, bridges, tunnels, dams, and highways, cement begins as an ordinary rock extracted from a quarry. Its journey seems simple, but behind it lies crushing, extreme heat, chemical reactions, giant kilns, and mills capable of transforming limestone into the grey powder that sustains much of the modern world. Cement manufacturing begins far from silos and construction bags. It starts in the quarry, where limestone appears in large rock formations created over millions of years. This rock typically originates from the deposition of marine remains, shells, microscopic skeletons, and sediments rich in calcium carbonate. Over time, pressure, compaction, and geological changes transform these deposits into solid masses that are now extracted to produce one of the most widely used materials on the planet. Limestone is essential because it provides calcium, the main element that will later form the silicates and aluminates responsible for cement hardening. However, limestone alone is insufficient. Cement also needs silica, alumina, and iron oxides. These components usually come from clays, marls, schists, silica sands, iron ores, or corrective materials added in calculated proportions. Before extracting the rock, technicians study the quarry. Samples are taken, the strata are analyzed, and the chemical composition of each area is determined. This step prevents materials with excess magnesium, unwanted impurities, or unstable proportions from entering the process. The quarry functions like a vast mineral storehouse, but each layer offers a different recipe. The cement industry needs to precisely blend these layers to obtain a consistent supply. Extraction is carried out by drilling, controlled blasting, or mechanical cutting, depending on the rock's hardness and the deposit's conditions. In a typical operation, enormous drills bore holes into the quarry wall. Industrial explosives are then loaded in quantities calculated to fracture the rock without completely pulverizing it. The detonation dislodges large blocks, which fall to the base of the rock face and are ready to be loaded. Mechanical shovels and front-end loaders collect the fragments and deposit them onto mining trucks. These vehicles transport tens or hundreds of tons per trip to the primary crusher. There, size reduction begins. The rock, which can arrive with dimensions similar to those of a small car, enters jaw crushers, impact crushers, or gyratory crushers. These machines apply pressure and blows until the blocks are broken down into much more manageable fragments. Primary crushing reduces the material to stones several centimeters in size. It can then undergo a second crushing stage, where the size is further refined. This step allows for a regular supply to the conveying, storage, and grinding systems. Cement production demands a continuous supply. A cement kiln operates for long periods without interruption, and any problem with the feed can affect the entire process. After crushing, the limestone and other materials are stored in pre-homogenization stockpiles. These stockpiles play a crucial role. Even though the quarry has been analyzed, the rock composition naturally varies. To smooth out these variations, the material is deposited in successive layers using conveyor belts and mobile elevators. It is then recovered by cross-cutting the stockpile so that the extracted material contains an average mixture of many layers. From this point on, the factory begins working with a more uniform raw material. Sensors, scales, chemical analyzers, and automated systems regulate the proportions of limestone, clay, and additives. The goal is to create a raw mix with a precise composition. This mix must contain the correct balance of calcium, silicon, aluminum, and iron so that, when it enters the kiln, the mineral compounds of clinker are formed. The next step is raw material grinding. The crushed limestone and the additives enter vertical roller mills or ball mills. There, they are pulverized into a fine mineral meal. In vertical mills, large rollers press the material against a rotating table. Simultaneously, hot gases dry the moisture present in the rocks and carry the fine particles to dynamic separators. The coarse particles are returned to the mill, while the fine particles continue the process. The resulting raw meal looks like a pale powder, but its importance is enormous. It already contains the chemical formula for cement. Quality control laboratories constantly analyze samples to measure calcium carbonate, silica, alumina, iron, moisture, and fineness. If any parameter deviates, the system adjusts the material dosage. This chemical precision allows the kiln to operate stably and ensures the final clinker reaches the required quality. After milling, the raw meal is stored in homogenization silos. These silos mix the powder using compressed air, internal agitation, and controlled extraction systems. The goal is to achieve an even more uniform mixture before firing. Every ton of meal entering the kiln must behave like the one before and the one after. In a cement plant, consistency is as important as power. Before reaching the kiln, the raw meal passes through a preheating tower. This tower can be as tall as a multi-story building and contains several interconnected metal cyclones. The flour descends by gravity through these cyclones, while the hot gases escaping from the oven rise in the opposite direction. This contact allows for the recovery of thermal energy and preheats the flour before the main baking process. Inside the cyclones, the raw meal is separated from the gas by centrifugal force. The particles spin, collide with the walls, and fall to the next level. With each descent, the temperature increases. The powder loses residual moisture, heats up progressively, and prepares for a crucial reaction: decarbonation. Decarbonation occurs when the calcium carbonate in the limestone decomposes under the influence of heat. The molecule breaks down into calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. This chemical change is one of the essential moments in the entire process. The calcium then becomes available to react with silica, alumina, and iron, while the carbon dioxide is released with the system's exhaust gases. For this reason, cement manufacturing is associated with both energy and chemical emissions. In many modern plants, the preheating tower incorporates a precalciner. This equipment functions as an additional combustion chamber where much of the decarbonation takes place before the material enters the rotary kiln. There, fuels are burned, and the temperature of the meal is raised in a controlled manner. This design improves energy efficiency, increases production capacity, and reduces the heat load inside the main oven. After passing through the preheater and precalciner, the material enters the rotary kiln. This kiln is an enormous metal cylinder lined internally with refractory bricks capable of withstanding extreme temperatures. It can measure tens of meters long and several meters in diameter. Its body rotates slowly, tilted a few degrees, so that the material advances from the entrance to the flame zone. At the hottest end of the kiln, an intense flame burns, fueled by pulverized coal, petroleum coke, natural gas, alternative fuels, or mixtures of several fuels. The flame creates a very high temperature zone where the partially calcined material begins to partially melt. It does not become completely liquid, but develops a molten phase sufficient for the components to react and bond. In this zone, the main minerals of clinker are formed. Among them are alite, belite, tricalcium aluminate, and tetracalcium aluminiferrite. Alite is especially important because it provides much of the cement's initial strength. Belite contributes to longer age strength. Aluminates and ferrites influence setting, chemical behavior, and interaction with sulfates. The formation of these minerals depends on temperature, residence time, flour composition, and the amount of liquid phase. The kiln functions as a continuous chemical reactor. The material enters as calcined powder and exits as clinker nodules. During its journey, it rotates, falls, mixes, absorbs heat, and passes through various thermal zones. Each movement promotes contact between particles and the formation of stable compounds. The refractory lining protects the metal shell of the kiln. Without this barrier, the steel would warp from the heat. The refractory bricks also help maintain a stable temperature and resist abrasion caused by the moving material. In some areas, an inner layer of adhered material, called a crust or coating, forms, which further protects the lining. Its stability is important for the kiln's lifespan. When the clinker reaches the outlet, it falls into a cooler. This step must occur quickly. Rapid cooling preserves the proper mineral structure and allows heat to be recovered for the process. In great coolers, the hot clinker moves over movable plates while large fans force cool air from below. The air absorbs heat and is then reused as combustion air in the kiln or precalciner. The clinker exits the kiln at very high temperatures, but after cooling, it can be handled using industrial systems. Even so, it retains enough heat to require heavy-duty conveyors and equipment designed for harsh environments. Its appearance is that of dark gravel with irregularly sized nodules. Inside are already the compounds that, later, upon contact with water, will react to form the hydrated products that harden the cement. Clinker quality control is constant. Its chemical composition, free lime content, mineralogy, weight per litre, and grinding behaviour are all analysed. Free lime indicates how much calcium oxide remains unreacted. An excess can cause unwanted expansion in the final cement. Insufficient firing produces low-quality clinker. Overfiring consumes more energy and can affect grindability. The cooled clinker is stored in silos, domes, or covered yards before undergoing final grinding. Although it resembles a simple granular stone, it is too coarse to act as cement. To react properly with water, it needs to be transformed into a very fine powder. The finer the powder, the greater the surface area available for hydration. This surface area influences the setting rate, strength development, and overall performance of the cement in construction. Final grinding combines clinker with a small proportion of gypsum. Gypsum plays an essential role. It regulates setting time. Without gypsum, the illuminates in clinker would react too quickly with water, causing almost immediate hardening, known as flash setting. Gypsum provides calcium sulfate, which controls this initial reaction and allows the cement to be transported, mixed, placed, and worked before hardening. In addition to gypsum, many modern cements incorporate mineral admixtures. These may include granulated blast furnace slag, natural podzolans, fly ash, limestone filler, or calcined clays. These admixtures modify properties, reduce clinker content, improve certain performance characteristics, and decrease the product's carbon footprint. The specific formulation depends on the type of cement being manufactured and the technical standards of each country. A cement mill can be a ball mill, a vertical roller mill, or a combination system with a roller press. In a ball mill, enormous rotating cylinders loaded with steel balls are used. Clinker, gypsum, and additives enter at one end, and the balls strike and crush the material into a powder. In vertical mills, rollers press the material against a rotating table, which is more energy efficient in many modern applications. During grinding, separators classify the particles. The finest particles are sent to the cement silos, while the coarser particles return to the mill for further reduction. This closed-loop system allows for control of the product's fineness. Cement needs to be fine, but it must also maintain a suitable particle size distribution. A powder that is too fine can increase water demand and generate higher heat of hydration. A powder that is too coarse can develop strength slowly. Temperature is also controlled. Grinding generates heat through friction, impact, and compression. If the cement gets too hot, the gypsum can partially dehydrate and alter the setting behavior. That's why ventilation systems, water injection in some mills, and constant temperature controls are used. Cement manufacturing depends on details that are invisible in the final bag but crucial on the construction site. Once ground, the cement is transported pneumatically or by elevators and conveyor belts to storage silos. Each silo can contain a different type of cement. At the top, filters capture dust to prevent emissions into the environment. At the base, aeration systems keep the material fluid and facilitate its discharge. Cement looks like a simple powder, but in large volumes it behaves like a complex material, capable of compacting, forming internal vaults, or clogging pipes if the design is inadequate. The laboratory intervenes again. Samples of the finished cement are taken for physical and chemical tests. Fineness, setting time, expansion, compressive strength, composition, loss on ignition, and other standard parameters are measured. To test strength, mortars are prepared with cement, standardized sand, and water. Specimens are then molded, cured under controlled conditions, and broken at defined ages, such as 2, 7, or 28 days. The force required to break them indicates whether the cement meets its strength class. Ordinary Portland cement develops strength because its minerals react with water. Alite and belite produce hydrated calcium silicate gel, known technically as CSH. This gel is primarily responsible for the cement's hardness and mechanical strength. Calcium hydroxide and other hydrated compounds are also formed. The hydration process continues for days, weeks, or even months, as long as moisture is available. On construction sites, cement is rarely used alone. It is mixed with sand to form mortar or with sand, gravel, and water to produce concrete. The cement coats the aggregates, fills spaces, and creates a hardened matrix that binds them together. The strength of concrete depends on the type of cement, the water-cement ratio, the quality of the aggregates, curing, compaction, and mix design. Therefore, a bag of cement represents only the beginning of a broader technical chain. Cement can be delivered in bulk or in bags. Bulk cement is loaded into pressurized tanker trucks that transport it to concrete plants, precast concrete plants, large construction sites, or distribution centers. Bags are filled by automatic bagging machines, which dispense the powder into multi-layer paper bags or reinforced materials. They then pass through control scales, conveyor belts, palletizers, and wrapping machines. Each pallet of bags must be protected from moisture. Cement reacts with water even before it reaches the construction site. If stored in humid environments, cement can clump, lose reactivity, and reduce its performance. Therefore, it is stored in dry, well-ventilated areas, elevated off the ground. Logistics also play a role in its quality. Even perfectly manufactured cement can deteriorate if mishandled after leaving the plant. The cement industry today operates under increasing pressure to produce the material the world needs while simultaneously reducing its environmental impact. Some emissions come from the fuel used to heat the kiln, and others from the decarbonation of limestone. This is why thermal efficiency technologies, alternative fuels, cements with a lower clinker content, carbon capture, and new combinations of cementitious materials are being developed. Blended cements are also gaining importance. By replacing a portion of the clinker with materials possessing hydraulic or pozzolanic properties, the embodied energy per ton of cement is reduced, and properties such as durability, heat of hydration, and resistance to aggressive environments are adjusted. Slag, pozzolans, and calcined clays represent increasingly relevant pathways for construction with a smaller environmental footprint. The final product of the process is a grey powder that may seem unassuming, but it encapsulates a vast industrial chain. The limestone was extracted, crushed, mixed, ground, preheated, calcined, clinkerized, cooled, ground again, tested, and shipped. At each stage, there was chemical control, thermal energy, heavy machinery, and technical precision.